In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
Oh yes, we're back.
We're back with
We are.
the start of the Almost Unbelievable Season 2 Paranormal Podcast with your host. I'm Ranty, or hosts. I'm Ranty. That must mean you're Cats. Is that right?
It is, and I am here, and what a show we've got for the first episode of Season 2. It was one hell of a story. I'm really looking forward. I hope, and I know that the people listening are going to enjoy it every bit as much as we did.
Well, I don't know about enjoy. I was actually quite terrified last night. I didn't sleep very much at all. And as you know, we always record the intros and the outros at another date. So this is just one of those cases where the story, we have already heard it, and we're going to show it to you guys, or we're going to let you hear it at least, and it's going to knock your socks off.
Absolutely. But before we do that, should we get into a little bit of a story, a little bit of a tale?
Go on then. Now, we don't rehearse this ever, so just so the audience knows, I have no idea what Cats is about to drop on me. So I am all ears, Cats. Go ahead.
Well, I want to tell you about one TV show I saw when I was 13 years old in 1992 that frightened the pants off me then and frightens the pants off me even now when I look back at it. Are you familiar with BBC's Ghost Watch?
No, that's one thing I'm not.
Now, I can guarantee everything I'm about to tell you is a true story, however bizarre it sounds. Ghost Watch was a one-off show presented by legendary British presenter Michael Parkinson. He was joined at the time by two other hosts who, in the early 1990s, were very big BBC personalities, a lady called Sarah Green and a gentleman called Mike Smith. And the whole show centered around Michael Parkinson being in a studio with a live feed to a haunted house in which Sarah Green was going to go and visit. And she went to the haunted house and she spoke to the family in the haunted house. And while she was there, over the couple of hours that the show lasted, some very strange things started to happen. Girls were being attacked and had scratches on the body. Things were being thrown across the room. There was banging. The lights were flickering on and off. And it got extremely disturbing to the point where at the end of the show, the girls, or one of the girls, had been full on possessed by the ghost in the house. Now, when the show had finished, 20,000 people had phoned up the BBC because they were just highly disturbed by what they'd just seen. 3 women who were pregnant had ended up going into labour because it was that disturbing. And the most unfortunate thing of all is one young teenager, a couple of days later, he was so affected by what he saw and the fact that he now truly believed that ghosts exist from what he saw, that he actually took his own life so he could become a ghost. That is a true story. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that reminds me of the War of the Worlds, isn't it? When they did that radio broadcast and everyone thought that they were being attacked. And you could imagine, I suppose, back in the, well, what would it have been? 1992, did you say? So back then, we didn't have the internet back then. So if people weren't aware of these kind of things going on, and I have to say, I don't know whether it was true. I don't know whether it's a true story. I don't know whether these things really happened. I don't know whether it was just set up so that it would be a good show. And obviously the producer that made the show kind of thought it would be a good idea to actually put something on like that. Maybe that was the case, but it seems to me like it kind of backfired.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head there, because what actually happened was, again, we have no internet. We had the Radio Times back then, which was a magazine which told everyone what was going to be on television. And on the week, and I think it actually came out on the day of the show, the front cover of this program was dedicated to the Ghost Watch program. And it was explained in the Radio Times that they were going to be doing a show that looked like it was live, but it was actually a pre-recorded drama. And none of it was real, and everything was, all the parts were going to be taken by actors. But because so few people read the Radio Times, the number of people who actually thought what they were watching was a live show was absolutely ridiculous. And of course, it did lead to somebody losing their life. Tragically so. Really, really shocking event.
Indeed. Well, today's guest, now we've already heard this story, and as I say, I didn't sleep very well last night after hearing her story. So let me just tell you that this story, and I believe it's real. I believe what she said and what she told us is genuinely real, first and foremost. And what you're about to hear is something similar, maybe more terrifying actually. And we have the address also, so, listen to the story. If you're a ghost hunter and you're interested in tracking down any of these supernatural houses or any kind of poltergeist activity, then you want to listen to this one. But I would warn you, definitely do not go to this house. When you've listened to this story, I would be surprised if anybody wants to go there. And with that warning, I am going to introduce today's guest. And today's guest is called Celia. Take it away.
Okay, so this is going back to 2014. Me and he was my boyfriend at the time, we were trying to find a place to live. And he showed me his hometown of Haverty Grace, Maryland. As soon as I came to this town, I was like, I need to live here. I really like this place. So we started looking for places to live, and we found this really nice, affordable duplex. And it was huge. So that was kind of like, why is this place so cheap? Because everything's so expensive here. We looked around, we met up with the landlord. We really liked it. Didn't get any kind of bad feeling or anything when we looked at the house, but it was a really quick tour. And 2 weeks later, we moved in. So things kind of took off pretty quickly after that. My first sign that something was going on was my daughter. She's 7 now. She was an infant at the time. I would see her interacting with someone that was above her. She would be looking up, smiling, reaching her arms out like she was trying to interact with somebody that I couldn't see. So I thought maybe it was her great-grandfather because he had just passed away. So I kind of just brushed it off and kept going about my business. And then at night, when me and my boyfriend would be laying down to go to sleep, we would hear walking, moving. You would hear the floors creaking. It was a really old house. It was built in like the 1920s. So we thought maybe, it's a duplex. Maybe it's the people next door. And then we started to notice that you could tell the difference between the floors creaking next door and the floors creaking on our side of the house. So we started to listen a little bit more, and then the nightmare started. So it was the same exact nightmare every night that I would have of a shadow man. It was just a big, muscular shadow man. And it was every night we would be fighting for our lives, basically. This shadow man was attacking us, and we would be trying to fight him off. There was one nightmare where he actually had my daughter Evelyn in his arms, and he was trying to take her out of the house. And it would always be, as soon as he would go to attack us, I would wake up. And the interactions between him and my daughter, or whatever it was, and my daughter started to become more upsetting to her. She would still be looking up, but then she would start to cry and she would start to scream. She would wake up. She was a really easy baby, and she started to scream a lot, cry a lot. She was starting to become kind of colicky. So we would be in bed at night, and we would hear the hangers in the closet would clang together. They were metal hangers. And still my husband, or, my boyfriend at the time, thought that it was just, I don't know what he thought it was. And there was no windows open. There was no draft in the house. So in my mind, I was like, okay, there's definitely a spirit here. And then one night we were laying down in bed, and I just started to drift off, and I heard him moaning, like struggling kind of moan, like he couldn't breathe. So I kind of sat up, and I was like, Jeremy. And he jumped up out of the bed, and he screamed like a lady. And he told me that there was a big black mass over him, holding him down and whispering really fast in his ear. He couldn't make out what it was saying, but he said that it was like something shrouded in like a black, he described it like it was black lace, and it was just hanging over the top of him, holding him down in bed, whispering. He could feel the breath in his ear of whatever it was. So that's when he started to kind of pay attention a little bit more. We would be in the kitchen doing dishes, and we had a pull string light. If you were in there by yourself, the pull string light would shut off on you, stuff like that. And then it turned into physical attacks. So I was bringing my daughter upstairs to take a nap, and I physically felt something smack her out of my hand. And I caught her just in time before she cracked her head on the wooden stairs. That was kind of it for me. But we couldn't just leave. We had to find another place to live. And my husband, he traveled for work. He did cell phone towers. So he would go away for a week at a time, come back. And whenever he was gone, things would get worse. So now we started seeing, the only way I can describe it is like it was a little gargoyle dude. We'd see him out of the corner of our eyes. Like if you're sitting on the bed and you would see him out of the corner of your eye in the doorway, and then you could hear him running down the hallway. If you looked in that direction, you would hear it run away. And then it started to attack me in the shower. I would be able to tell that there was somebody watching me while I was taking a shower. And then I would have scratches or I would have bruises, and that there was no explanation for that I didn't have before the shower. I would get out of the shower, I would have scratches, and they were always in threes. So I started trying to do research on the house, try to find out the history. And then I started to reach out to mediums. I couldn't find any information on the house because all of the addresses in the town changed. The street names changed over years. So I couldn't find any information on this house to find out who lived there, who died there, what happened there. So I contacted a medium who had a really good reputation. Her name was Sherry. And she came out to my house 3 times. The first time she came out, she did the whole, let me just walk around. Don't tell me anything. Let me see if I can get anything. She knew about my daughter's great-grandfather, and she knew his name, everybody called him Papa. And she said that he had like a West Virginia accent, which he definitely had. And this is stuff that she didn't know. She didn't know me before she came to my house, before I contacted her. She said he was there, and he was very worried because there was a man there who was trying to attach himself to me. And didn't like my husband, obviously, saw that as a threat, was trying to get him out of the picture. So she walked around the house some more. And as soon as she walked in the bathroom, she stopped in the breezeway into the bathroom, because she told me that back in maybe around 1928, a man, a very bad man, is all she would tell me, committed suicide in the bathtub. And when he committed suicide in the bathtub, his spirit, ghost, whatever you want to call it, his soul got stuck in the house, and he was trying to attach himself to someone so he could leave the house. And he was keen on females. So that's why he was trying to attach himself to me. And after she came the first time, things got a lot worse. Then it was, you're sitting in bed at night and it felt like an earthquake, and there isn't generally earthquakes on the East Coast. So it would sound like, the whole house would shake and bang. So that started happening. And then I would hear my daughter's crib rattling. So I would get up, run down the hallway into her room. And she was dead asleep. Her crib was rattling, and she was pinned up on the side of the crib as if somebody turned her on her side and was just holding her up against the side of the crib. So I did some stuff that she taught me, that this medium taught me, in order to try to protect the baby. And so I did that stuff, and that stopped, but it didn't stop for me. So I kept seeing this little gargoyle dude, and then I was laying down in bed, and then I would hear what sounded like claws dragging down my pillow right in front of my face. I started hearing voices in my head, and this medium was telling me that this thing was attaching itself to me. So almost like a possession, you could say. My thoughts started to change. And I promise I'm not a crazy person. I'm sure you guys hear that all the time, but I'm not crazy. This all happened. And then I woke up. It was the last night we were in that house. And my husband was away for work. I was packing up the house. I woke up in the morning and I walked out into the hallway, and I looked at the wall from the top of the stairs to my daughter's room, where it looked like if you took claws and stuck them in mud and just drug them down the wall, the whole length of the hallway over to my daughter's bedroom door. And I took pictures of it, and I wanted to show it to my husband. By the time he got home, the camera broke. It just wouldn't work anymore. It was really weird. I could not get all the pictures I took were black, and then the camera just stopped working after that. I could never get it to work again. So that really sucked. But this place was extremely terrifying. And after we lived in this house, it kind of opened us up to these other hauntings, I believe, because we've had, like I mentioned before we started recording, I've had several hauntings living in this town, in almost every house we've lived in since we moved here. But whatever it was that was there did not follow me, thank God, or my daughter. And that is pretty much the story from start to finish. It was very terrifying, but that's pretty much all I have for that house.
Wow.
I have goosebumps and my hairs are sticking up on my arm. So.
It was really scary. And I was trying to remember everything. I'm sure I might have left a little bit of it out because so much stuff was happening. It was so much. It was like a movie. It was like a scary movie. It was like, I've always believed in the paranormal, but to have something like that happen to my family was fucking scary.
Go ahead, Cats. You lead the way on this one. I'm going to sit back for a minute.
See, the type of stories that are always most fascinating to me are the ones where there are multiple people all having the same experience, which obviously you have had. That makes it very, very difficult to explain away, doesn't it? Very difficult.
Very difficult.
Can I just ask, the house that you were in, I know you said that the town itself has got this history. Have you ever spoken to anybody who has lived prior to you in the house or since you were there in the house? Oh,
yes.
Go on. What did they say?
I did. So when we lived there, we kept getting mail for like 7 different other people that lived there before us, which was kind of scary because it's like, damn, how many people have lived here? So I tried to reach out to a couple of them, and they said that they would live there and the same things happened to them. And they literally had to get up and leave the house. And since I lived there, so we lived there for about 4 months before we had to get the hell out. And it's been the same thing over the years. I've watched because I've lived in the town. So I've kind of watched the house. And it's like a big deal. I tell everybody I know, I tell about it. I don't care if they think I'm crazy because it was so out of this world that this happened. And no one stays there for more than 6 months that I've seen. The house is empty right now.
Wow. Now, you said that you saw this creature out the corner of your eye, the gargoyle-looking type thing. When you discussed that with each other, because obviously if you see it fleetingly out the corner of your eye, it's going to be very difficult to get a really good look at it. When you discussed that with each other, was it very clear you were seeing the same thing?
Yeah, so I was noticing it and not saying anything because I was like, now I'm getting paranoid because this stuff's happening. So maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But then it was like we were sitting on the bed one night watching a movie and my husband, I saw it, didn't say anything. And he was like, did you just fucking see that thing? And I was like, what did you see? And he's like, it looked like a little dude, like a little like gremlin dude. And I'm like a gargoyle? And he was like, yeah, like a gargoyle. He's like, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I've been seeing it for like 2 months now. So I know I'm not crazy now because you're seeing it. So that kind of validated it for me where I was like, okay, this thing is real.
And when you left the house, you say that the thing didn't come with you, but you did allude to the fact that it kind of has opened you up, like you said, to other hauntings, etc. So have you had, any kind of similar experience then since you left?
Yes, the last house we lived in before the house I'm in now, I've been in here for almost 3 years. The house I lived in right before this one was haunted, but they weren't malevolent or whatever you want to call them. They were just there stuck. It was a family. It was a husband, a wife, and a little girl. And I actually saw like full body apparitions in that house, heard a woman's voice, like whispering, like that house was really haunted. And my landlord at the time, I kind of was just like, dude, is this place haunted? I thought he was going to be like, you're crazy. And he was like, oh yeah, the place is haunted. And I was like, cool, thanks for letting me know now, dude. I wish I would have known that before I agreed to move in here.
Last question from me then for a second, and apologies if you mentioned this, but the medium you got in touch with, what did they say, the cause of it all was? Like, what information could they give you that perhaps you didn't know?
So she told me that it was a man. He was a very bad man in life, and he committed suicide. He committed suicide in the bathtub. He slit his wrists, apparently. And the mirror that was directly across from the bathtub that he killed himself in was still in the house when I lived there, but it was down in the breezeway between the living room and the dining room. And I would always get weird feelings when I would look in this mirror, and I thought if you were looking in the mirror, right behind you was a closet that kind of went under the stairs, like one of those big closets. And I thought it was like something weird with the closet. And she was like, no, it's the mirror, because he was like stuck in the mirror. When he killed himself in that bathtub, he got stuck. And that's why he's trying really hard to attach himself so he can get out of here. She said he was almost not human anymore because he was so dark.
Wow. Well, I'm going to put myself on mute. I think my questions have run the course for now. Auntie, over to you.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, I'm I'm actually going over this story through my head, and
Okay.
I'm getting the feeling from you. I'm actually feeling what you're feeling, which is weird.
Yeah. So I've always been an empath, but I did not know that before I lived in this house. Now I know it because I picked up on all these feelings in this house. And then, like, when I was saying about the voice in my head that I started to hear, we all have a voice in our head, obviously. We all, like, have we have conversations in our head. We do it. Okay. But it was like a man's voice in my head saying crazy shit like, God is dead. I'll never forget when I heard that in my head. It was the last night we lived there. And I heard a man's voice say, God is dead in my head. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I called the medium at like 4:00 in the morning because there was so much shit happening in the house at that night. It's like it knew we were leaving and it was pissed off. And she was like, it happens. What did she say? It's oppression, aggression, possession. It happens in those steps. So oppression is when you start seeing things, hearing things. Aggression is when you start to get the scratches, the bruises, all that kind of stuff. Possession is when they attach themselves. She's like, you're very close to being possessed. And I was like, fuck that.
Don't blame you. I don't blame you. I'm as I say, I'm actually feeling what when you said it, I felt it. Which I think the audience that is listening to this is also going to feel it too, because it must have been absolutely terrifying.
It was so terrifying that I almost couldn't function anymore. It was starting to hinder me being able to do my normal daily routine because I was so terrified. I wasn't sleeping, like I was starting to not eat. We never even finished setting up the whole house when we moved in because so much started happening so fast.
I can imagine. Right, so some questions. The first part of the story, you talked about having some kind of nightmare. Now,
yeah.
Was the whole family experiencing these nightmares, or was it just you?
So at first, it seemed to be just me. It could have been my husband not saying anything about it, because like I said, he was super, I don't even want to say skeptic. He was just completely non-believer. One of those like, I'm a dude, that shit's not real, like one of those kinds of people. And then over the course of the months that we lived there, he started to have the same nightmares.
Okay, and you originally said it was like a hat man. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, so what he looked like to me, and from what my husband described to me, so if you picture like a really muscular, completely bald dude, maybe like, close to 7 feet tall, that's what he looked like. But just black, like blacker than black. Like if he was standing in a completely dark room, you would be able to see him because he'd be blacker than the black in the room.
Now, we had a story last season from a lady that was also stalked by a hat man, and her partner as well also had a dream about being attacked by this hat man. And the similarities were uncanny when you actually started saying that. But then obviously it changed from being a hat man to being some kind of goblin. Do you think they were the same thing?
So here, the medium told me that he kind of had little like minions. So I feel like he was the main entity and the little gargoyle dudes were like his minions.
Okay, and how many times do you think you saw the hat man or dreamt about the hat man compared to how many times you actually saw the goblins with the 3 claws?
It was always together. So if I had the nightmare about him, which was almost every night that we lived there over the course of 4 months, I would always see the little gargoyle dudes within hours of waking up. I would start seeing them all over the house.
This is quite terrifying, I have to say.
It was so scary, man. And then when the rumbling of the house was even more terrifying. And then I had the neighbors on the other side of the duplex come over and tell me they were sitting on their couch and their crucifix that was hanging over their kitchen, entryway, lifted up off the hook and flew across their living room.
Wow, this seems like some kind of serious possession. And I know Katz is the scientist here, and obviously he's going to be trying to find a scientific explanation for this. I'm more of the empath because I've actually experienced a lot of things in my time too. Terrifying things. And what you're telling me is akin to something like the Enfield haunting. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have heard of that, and I've like extensively looked into it because it's so interesting to me.
Okay, so that does sound like at least we're on the same page there. Right, let's move on. Let's go forward. So the scratches on you in the shower, that interested me, and these bruises. Did you actually feel anything when you were actually having the shower, or was it only when you was like drying off and looking at yourself afterwards that you thought, hey, where did that come from?
So the first couple of times it happened, I didn't feel anything. So I kind of chalked, maybe I cut myself somehow. I was like in denial about it. And then the last few times that it happened, I would get it's a burning from the inside out. I don't know how, it's not like, if you get scratched by a cat. It burned from the inside outwards, and then I would look down and there would start to, it would kind of be little welts. And then within a few minutes, it would be bleeding.
That's crazy. Did you manage to take any photographs of them, or did you just not think of doing it at the time?
I did. I started taking photographs of everything because I wanted to have proof, because I wanted to be able to talk about this and have proof to go with it. And the camera broke. I don't know why it broke. I don't really have an explanation for it. It just wouldn't work anymore. Just the pictures that I took I'd look at the pictures after I took them and they'd all be there. And they'd be there for a few days. And then if I went to go like show them to somebody, they'd all be black. And then the camera just stopped working.
Wow. Have you thought about getting the memory card out of the actual camera?
I did. I tried to get the memory card out of it and see if I could get it out and put it in something else. And it did the same thing. I broke like 3 phones.
Wow, it seems
like something was blocking me from trying to show that to anyone, so that I just look like a crazy person.
This is quite the story, I have to say. I think of all the stories we've had up to date, this is definitely the most scary. I thought the original Hatman was scary, but this is definitely moving things along just a little bit. Let's talk about the last day that you were there and you saw these claw marks.
Oh, that was so scary, dude. That was probably one of the scariest things that happened. Getting up in the morning, it was like slow motion. I saw the claw marks. It was like it did it on purpose to scare me, starting from the top of the stairs, going all the way down the hallway, and then turning, going right through, the door frame into my daughter's room, and then they just stopped. And then I ran in, thinking something happened to my daughter, and she was just sitting there like playing, like, hey, mommy, get me out of here. I gotta eat. You know what I mean? Like, it was so scary.
So, when your husband came home that night, were the claw marks still visible?
Yes, because the medium told me she wanted to come over and help me remove them from the wall, because she was like, if you just wash the wall, that could be bad. She's like, you're going to have to smudge and you're going to have to use holy water to clean the wall. So they were there when we left. Like, I didn't take them off, so I left them there. I tried to talk to the landlord and he like laughed in my face.
Okay, so final question from me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be about the mirror.
Yes.
Has anybody thought about breaking that mirror?
No, the medium, I thought about it. I was like, should I like take this fucking thing in the yard and smash it? And she was like, oh my God, don't do that. She's like, but you can take it out of your house. So we actually took it off the wall and put it outside. And it didn't really do anything. It didn't really stop any activity from happening. So I don't know if it's still there or what.
Well, I'm not going to advocate breaking that mirror. Definitely not. That isn't some kind of, oh, let's break the mirror and this will all go away. So I don't want the audience to think that I've just sort of like said, if you do that, that's going to happen, because that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to know whether or not you actually did consider breaking it, because that would have run through my mind.
Yep, I did consider breaking it. I was like, maybe if I didn't know. I never, like I said, I believed in all this stuff, never dealt with it, watched it in movies, stuff like that, didn't really know how to handle this situation. I did think about breaking it. I'm glad I talked to her, because she was like, don't do that. She was like, if you do that, you're going to unleash something that you're never going to. She told me that if we would have stayed in that house, it might have taken years to get rid of whatever that guy or whatever that thing was.
Wow. I know that I said I was just going to say this was the last question, but this really will be the last question.
Okay.
The house, and I know that there's a whole host of houses out there that are famous. They've got Amityville, you've got the Enfield Haunting, and a plethora of others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, or is it possible that this house may make it onto one of the most famous haunted houses going forward?
Absolutely. If people weren't so scared to talk about it for fear of being judged, it absolutely could be one of the most haunted houses in America. The house should just be bulldozed, honestly.
Wow, and you say it's absolutely uninhabited right now.
Yeah, it's completely empty. The one side of the duplex is lived in, and then the other side that we lived in is empty right now. Because I keep track of that house. I want to know what's going on.
Okay, right. I say this again, another last question. Would it be possible for you to tell us off air, not online, privately, what this address is?
Absolutely.
And if any ghost hunters wish to actually go and try the luck there, maybe I could pass that information on to them. What do you think?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Well, there we go. That's a challenge. So any listeners listening right now, if you know a ghost hunter or you're part of a ghost hunting group or you may know of a ghost hunter, send them over to this podcast, let them listen to this, and then if they want the address, tell them to email us. That's admin@almost-unbelievable.com. That's admin@almost-unbelievable.com, and we will tell you the address and you can go and check it out for yourself. But I'll tell you what, after listening to that, I wouldn't want to go in that house. Hell no.
Nope. I'm good. I will never go back in that house again. I will look at it when I drive by or walk by. I don't even want to look at the house when I walk by it because it's so scary.
Right, Katz, do you have anything further for our guest today?
No, I think you've asked some excellent questions there. It was just a great story. I just want to thank you so much for that. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you.
No problem. I felt like I was kind of jumping around a little bit because I was trying to get all my thoughts in order. So I'm sorry if it sounded a little bit jumbled up.
Oh, no, it was amazing.
Okay, awesome.
No, it was absolutely fine, and I'm sure the audience will also appreciate the way you said it, because it actually made us feel the intensity that you were actually portraying through the jumping around and talking about it, because it came across that we felt. That's how I was able to feel. Like you say, yes. The empath in me was able to feel that because I could feel your thoughts, whatever it was that you were going through. I could feel that. So,
yes. Okay, awesome. I'm glad that it came across that way.
Yeah, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Thank you very much for that.
I know it's almost your bedtime. I still have the rest of the day. Sorry about that.
Well, Celia, thank you very much for the story. And I tell you what, it's put the heebie-jeebies up me. And I think we need to defer back to the pit where Katz can gather his thoughts and hopefully bring up some kind of scientific reason as to what may have occurred here with those experiences. So without further ado, over to you, Katz.
Well, what a story. I mean, brilliant. I have to be the first one up, don't I, to try and think of something to say to scientifically rationalize what we've just heard there. My word, how am I going to do that? No idea. Let's just talk about a few things, though. And I'm not claiming these are the causes of the story we've just heard, but let's talk about some things that are related, at least, to what we've just heard. We've got a situation here where we've got a family, and this whole family are experiencing the same thing, a shared experience. Now, according to the World Health Organization, it is absolutely not possible, but it's a fairly common occurrence for closely knit, closely related families to share experiences that aren't exactly true. In fact, they estimate that there's about 0.1% of families will experience this to some degree through their lifetime. Now, obviously, the story that they were sharing was of a paranormal origin. So let's tackle just some of the things in isolation that they have seen together and just see if we can throw some rationale on it. A lot of the things that we were told that they saw was really hidden out the way, out the corner of their eye, and it would vanish when you go and look at it, which is, a very normal occurrence. We see something fleeting in our peripheral vision, our brain makes something of it. But the conversations after that are what really flesh out the memories and put what you've just seen into context. So when you take two or three people who are all supporting each other with the idea that they are seeing, for example, a gargoyle or something else, it can be very, very easy to become convinced more than the evidence shows that these things are actually there. And I'm not saying this is what happened with this family, but it can easily be done. I want to go to the scratches on the body, because that was quite alarming for me. I had to do a lot of research into this, and I came across a condition called dermatographia. I'm sure doctors will tell me I've pronounced that wrong, but there is a skin condition where any sort of light scratch whatsoever can temporarily, for a few hours, flare up into quite a nice inflamed red line that would look like something far worse than it actually is. It's a condition of the skin, and it can be exaggerated by heat, such as having a hot shower. And I do notice that she did say that when she come out of the shower, she saw these scratches on her body, and it may well be that these were just tiny, tiny scratches she's picked up. Maybe she suffers from this condition, and it looked far worse than it was. Although that is pushing it a little bit. What I can't explain is the previous tenants in the house having similar experiences, tenants since then having similar experiences. None of that makes any sense to me. In fact, none of the story makes any sense to me. I'm sure if Celia's listening back now, she'll be listening to what I'm saying, thinking none of this is the reason for what we experienced. But it's the closest thing that I can put to that has any kind of scientific spin on it. So with that, I'm going to say I'm pretty clueless, and I'm going to pass over to you.
Well, I think you need a little bit of a round of applause there, because you at least gave it a very decent attempt to actually make something scientific of that.
I tried. I did try.
You certainly did. And I'm going to, like I say, I'm going to pat you on the back. And obviously, that is why we are co-hosts. You know, you are the scientist here, and clearly you've tried to science it. I might not agree. I don't think the audience may agree either. But
I don't think I agree. I don't even think I agree. But I so I'm happy with that.
well done anyway. Right, so what am I going to say? Well, there are things called vengeful ghosts. I don't know if you've heard of them, but the vengeful ghost, basically in folklore or mythology, is said to be the spirit of a dead person who returns from the afterlife to seek revenge for an unnatural or unjust death. Now, it's interesting that the guy that died in this house, this monster, let's say, he actually hung himself, right? And he killed himself. So that could be, as I say, something from mythology that's been handed down, that they know that if somebody dies in that way, then it's likely that the spirit of the person is likely to linger around a little bit. So that's one thing that I can bring to the table. Also, there are other famous stories. There's Amityville. I'm sure you've heard of that. You've also heard of the film Poltergeist. You know, that's another one that's around there. There's the Battersea Poltergeist. I don't know if you've heard of that one, have you?
Yes, I have. Yeah, very much so, yeah.
Okay, well, there's the Battersea Poltergeist and there's the Galloway Poltergeist. So, throughout history and in probably every region around the world, there are very well known cases of paranormal / poltergeist activity. So, I think this isn't out of the normal, let's say, but it certainly is up there, in my opinion, with at least the Amityville stuff that went on. And I tell you what, I have a strong feeling that we are going to get some emails from people who want to actually get in touch with us to ask us, do you know what? Can you tell us that address? I would love to go there and do some kind of stakeout or some kind of ghost hunt, maybe. Now, apparently, the apartment is available. There's nobody living there currently, which is great. So don't hesitate to get in touch, because if you do want to go down there and give it a try, spend a few nights there, this might be a place for you to go, and I'm sure that the owner will allow you to do that. Anyway, for me at least, the idea that the spirit was trapped in the mirror, totally plausible to me. I had an experience when I was younger of what seemed to be a possessed totem pole that was making drum noises. And I've already told this story, and I felt that it was attached to this totem pole. So I can definitely say that I believe spirits, or bad spirits in this case, can definitely be attached to something physical. I believe that I've seen it myself, so, or experienced it myself at least. So totally agree with that. I wouldn't advocate smashing the mirror though. I know I said that in the actual podcast, but I certainly wouldn't advocate smashing that mirror. So as I say, as a believer myself, I am totally on board with everything that she said. I believed everything that happened to her. I believe all the tales that went along with it, the photographs that didn't pan out, the camera that stopped working, the scratches that were going up and down the walls, the fact that the crucifix flew off the wall on the next door neighbour's house, all this stuff. Terrifying, and a brilliant way to start season 2. But I will say, next week, we don't have quite as scary a story as this. It's more of a mystery than a scary one. That might make you want to return in case you was a little bit too terrified with this story.
But what a great start to season 2. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Celia, for coming on. And if you check out the description, you'll find where you can find us on YouTube, where you can find us on Patreon, where you can see images that our guests have sent us and video clips that we might mention on the podcast. And I think with that, I'm done, unless you've got anything, Ranty.
And lastly, yes, of course, you have our email inside of the description too. So you can, of course, contact us, find out all the details of where this residence is. But for now, I think that'll do for today. I need to lie down. What about you?
Definitely.
Take care.
Bye-bye.